They call it water cooler talk, a harmless bit of chatter to break up the soul-crushing monotony of another Tuesday. They're fools. Every last one of them, with their polyester blouses and their sad packed lunches reeking of microwaved fish. They think the gossip that flutters around this office is just noise. They don't understand that it's the real currency here. It's the only thing with any value. My name is Helen, and I'm 57 years old. I've worked at Sterling Price Insurance for 28 of those years. I have a corner cubicle with a dying fern, a title that means nothing, senior accounts coordinator, and a pension that I'll probably be too decrepit to enjoy. I stopped trying to climb the corporate ladder about a decade ago, right around the time I realized the rungs were greased and the whole thing was leaning against the wrong wall anyway. Real power isn't in a title. It's in knowing that Brenda from accounting is putting her discreet lunch with Mark from marketing on the company card. It's in seeing the way young, ambitious Jessica flinches when our boss, Mr. Hemingway, puts his hand on her shoulder and lets it linger just a second too long. It's knowing who is desperate, who is cheating, and who is about to have their whole world come crashing down. This office is my kingdom, and the whispers are my armies. I don't do it to be cruel. Well, not only to be cruel, I do it to feel like I'm still here. When you're my age in a place like this, you start to become invisible, a piece of the beige furniture. But they see me. Oh, they always see me coming. They smile, a little too brightly, and I can see the fear in their eyes. They're wondering what I know. And that, right there, is better than any promotion they could ever offer me. My goal, every single day, is to remind them that I exist. You probably think I'm a monster, a bitter old woman poking at other people's lives because my own is so empty. And maybe you're right. But you don't know what it's like to be on the other side of the whisper. You've never felt the silence that falls over a room when you walk in, the sudden shift in the air thick with words that were just spoken about you. 20 years ago, I was Jessica, ambitious, a little naive, and I made the mistake of trusting the wrong person with a personal secret. A rumor started, a vicious, ugly thing about me and a senior partner. A story that took my private grief and twisted it into something sordid and cheap. It wasn't true, not a word of it. But truth doesn't matter much in a place like this. The story was just juicier. My career, my reputation, it all hung by a single fraying thread. I saw the smirks. I heard the hushed conversations that stopped the moment I turned a corner. It was like being flayed alive, one tiny cut at a time. I felt myself disappearing, being replaced by this grotesque caricature they'd created. I survived, barely, but I learned the most important lesson of my life in that crucible of whispers. You either wield the weapon or it gets used on you. There is no in-between. So I picked it up. I learned to listen, to watch, to see the cracks in people's carefully constructed masks. My cruelty isn't just for sport. It's a shield. It's the wall I built around myself, brick by ugly brick, to make sure no one could ever make me feel that small or that powerless ever again. It's my guarantee that I will never, ever be the subject of the story. I will always be the one telling it. It started the day I ruined the intern, Mindy. A quiet little thing, always staring with those wide, intense eyes that seemed to see right through you. She was too competent for her own good, and frankly, her silence was unnerving. So I gave her a story. I painted a picture for Brenda over lukewarm coffee, a few carefully chosen words about Mindy snooping through personnel files, a hint of corporate espionage. It was a masterpiece of implication, and it spread like wildfire. By noon, Mr. Hemingway had called her into his office. She came out with her face pale and blotchy, eyes swimming in tears. She packed her box and left without a word, but not before her gaze found me across the cubicles. It was just for a second, but it was heavy. I felt a delicious little thrill. I'd won. Later that afternoon, Brenda stopped by my desk, her eyes light, hungry for more. "So, did you hear of their pressing charges?" she asked, her voice a conspiratorial whisper. The lie came easily, a smooth, practiced thing. "Oh, absolutely," I said, leaning in, savoring the moment. Apparently, she was selling secrets to our biggest competitor, Axiom. As the words left my mouth, a strange sensation bloomed. It felt like a shot of Novocaine, a pins and needles numbness that spread across my lips, making them feel thick and foreign. The last few words felt clumsy, like my tongue was too big for my mouth. I touched my lips with my fingertips as Brenda walked away, satisfied. They felt normal. The feeling faded as quickly as it came. I brushed it off. Too much coffee, not enough water. That's all. That night, I stood in front of my bathroom mirror, going through the familiar ritual of removing my makeup. The fluorescent light of the vanity is always unkind, but tonight it seemed particularly cruel. Something was wrong with my mouth. I leaned closer, my heart giving a sudden hard thump against my ribs. My lips looked puffy, swollen, like I'd had a bad reaction to some new lipstick. But it was more than that. The delicate curve of my cubis bow, the little dip in my upper lip was less defined. It was smoother, flatter, as if an artist had smudged the lines of a charcoal drawing with a thumb. I ran my tongue over my lips. The skin felt strangely slick and rubbery, lacking its normal texture. A cold dread, slick and oily, began to seep into my bones. This wasn't an allergic reaction. This was a distortion. It was subtle, so subtle that anyone else might not even notice. But I knew my own face. I saw it every single day. And the face staring back at me was beginning to look like a stranger's. I splashed my face with cold water, scrubbing at my mouth as if I could wash the wrongness away. But when I looked up again, it was still there. A quiet, horrifying little change that made no sense at all. I went to work the next day with my mouth painted in the brightest, most distracting shade of red I owned, a garish shield. I told myself it was nothing. I was stressed. I was imagining things. Denial is a warm, comfortable blanket. I spent the morning in my cubicle, keeping my head down, speaking only when necessary, my words clipped and short. But the silence was suffocating. The urge, the need to talk, to weave my stories, was an itch under my skin. Around lunch, Mark from marketing cornered me by the coffee machine, his grin predatory. He'd heard my little embellishment about Mindy and wanted details. This was it. The stage was set. The audience was waiting. Every instinct screamed at me to shut up, to make an excuse, to walk away. But the fear of losing my grip, of becoming irrelevant and invisible again, was stronger than the strange dread that had taken root in my gut. So I gave him the performance of a lifetime. "It's worse than you think, Mark,"
I began, my voice dropping to a low, confidential tone. It wasn't just Axiom. She had a whole list of buyers. I saw an email on her screen before she was fired. Looked like a list of shell corporations. I was on a roll, the words flowing like poison from a broken vial, spinning a whole narrative, complete with fake emails and secret meetings. I was brilliant. And then I felt it. Not numbness this time, but a distinct pulling. A soft cartilaginous stretching at the corners of my mouth. It was a physical sensation, undeniable and terrifying, as if unseen fingers were hooking my lips and pulling them wider. I cut the conversation short, muttering an excuse about a deadline, and fled to the deserted bathroom at the end of the hall. My hands were shaking as I locked the door and turned to the mirror. The reflection made a gasp escape my throat, a sound that was half choke, half scream. The swelling was worse, the shape more distorted. My mouth was wider than it should be, flatter, the lips pushing forward into a pronounced and natural pout. The skin was smooth and almost yellow-tinged, losing its natural lines and texture. It was no longer a human mouth. It was the beginning of a bill.
Panic is a cold, sharp thing. For the rest of the day, I hid. I feigned a migraine, kept my head down, and spoke to no one. Every tick of a clock was a countdown to the quarterly review presentation the next morning. My presentation, a command performance in front of the entire department. There was no escaping it. I thought about calling in sick, but my fear of the whispers was greater than my fear of the thing on my face. At least it was then. I spent that night in a state of frenzied denial, applying ice packs and slathering my mouth with ointments. Nothing worked. The strange, hard tissue continued its slow, inexorable push outward. By morning, it was undeniable. A broad, flat, keratinous protrusion where my mouth used to be. I could barely speak. The words that came out were muffled and distorted, a grotesque quacking sound clinging to the edges of my consonants. I did the only thing I could. I wrapped a thick cashmere scarf around the lower half of my face, claiming a sudden severe toothache had required emergency dental surgery. The conference room was a glass box, a perfect stage for my humiliation. Everyone was there, their faces turned towards the podium with polite boredom. I walked to the front of the room, my heart hammering. I kept the scarf on. Mr. Hemingway gave me a strange look. "Helen, are you all right to do this?" "Perfectly fine," I mumbled, the words distorting into something like perfectly fine. His frown deepened. I had to take it off. With trembling hands, I unwound the scarf. A collective gasp sucked the air out of the room. It was like a gunshot. 20 pairs of eyes widened in shock and disgust and sheer, unadulterated horror. Brenda from accounting brought her hand to her own mouth. Mark's jaw hung open. Dead silence. They were all looking at my mouth. It was worse now, much worse. The pressure of the scarf had flattened it further, making it wider or more pronounced. The skin was a pale, waxy yellow. My nose seemed to be shrinking back into my face to accommodate the monstrous appendage. I opened my mouth to speak. "Good morphing," I quacked. The sound was alien, a wet, flat noise. A girl in the front row let out a tiny, choked squeak. Panic clawed its way up my throat. I had to control the narrative. "I apologize," I stammered, each word a painful, deformed thing. "I seem to be having a severe allergic reaction."
Liar! The word echoed in my own mind, and I felt a fresh wave of that horrifying, pulling sensation. It was stronger this time, a violent, tearing stretch. I could feel the cartilage hardening and growing. Right there, I watched their eyes track the change, their expression shifting from horror to stunned disbelief. My face was visibly warping. "It's the shellfish from dinner last night," I lied again, desperate, my voice rising in a panicked quack. A sharp cracking sound, audible in the silent room, came from my own jaw. The bill pushed forward another centimeter. My own hands flew to my face, but I couldn't stop it. I was a freak show. I was the story, the ugliest, strangest, most grotesque story this office had ever known. My eyes scanned the crowd of horrified faces, and then I saw her. Standing in the back of the room was Mindy, the intern. She wasn't staring in horror. She was just watching. Her expression was calm, impassive. And as my terrified, tear-filled eyes met hers, the corner of her mouth tilted up in the faintest, coldest, most serene smile I'd ever seen. That's what broke me. The knowledge, the certainty. It was her. The room started to spin. I turned and fled. I ran from the podium, shoving past a stunned Mr. Hemingway out of the conference room. I could hear the explosion of sound behind me, the gasps, the unexpected, shocked cries, the immediate frantic eruption of whispers. The sound followed me, chased me, a monster of my own making, out onto the street, where I stood in the harsh morning light, a monster with nowhere left to hide.
I was fired, of course. They called it indefinite medical leave, a gentle corporate euphemism for get out and never come back. My rage was a clean, pure thing. It burned away the fear and humiliation, leaving behind a single hard point of focus. Mindy, she had done this. She had turned me into the very thing I'd spent my life searing. She had made me the freak in the story. It wasn't hard to find her. A little digging online, a few social media breadcrumbs. I drove to her apartment that night, my monstrous face hidden by the darkness. I didn't have a plan. I only had the blinding, all-consuming need to make her pay. I broke down her door. She was there, in her small, neat living room, surrounded by strange-smelling candles and little bundles of herbs. She didn't look surprised. She just looked sad. "It didn't have to be this way," she said, her voice quiet. "You could have just stopped. You could have told the truth." I didn't let her finish. I lunged, a grotesque parody of a predator. It was a flurry of violence, ugly and desperate. And then it was over. She lay on the floor, still, her unnervingly intense eyes finally empty. I stood over her, breathing heavily, waiting for the release, waiting for the curse to break, waiting for my face to shrink back to normal. Nothing happened. I stumbled to her bathroom and stared at my reflection. The same grotesque yellow bill stared back. The same distorted, monstrous face. And in the crushing silence of that apartment, with the smell of blood and lavender in the air, the final, devastating truth hit me. My rage, my final act of malicious control had not saved me. It had damned me. Only Mindy could have reversed the curse. And I had just destroyed my only hope.
My fate was sealed. I'm telling you this now from a small, rented room in a town you've never heard of. I live on the savings, which will eventually run out. I only go out at night. The children here have stories about me. The duck woman who lives in the old house on the hill. They whisper when they think I can't hear. I can always hear. My life used to be about the power of words, about shaping the world with the whispers. And now I am trapped in silence. It is difficult to eat. It is nearly impossible to speak. All I have left is my reflection, a permanent, physical manifestation of my own inner ugliness. I was so terrified of being exposed, of becoming the subject of the gossip. I see now that was the wrong fear. The real horror, the true curse, is this profound, absolute irrelevance.
Thank you so much for watching or listening. Like and subscribe for more nightmares. Your support keeps the darkness from consuming this channel, so we can face the next terrifying story together. Don't be left in the dark.